Hey Magic fans, welcome back to Capnclyde's MTG. This is your captain speaking. Put them trade tables and seat backs in full upright position as today we cover blue in the limited format of Draft and Sealed. What are the all-stars and what are the not so all-stars? So before we get started, like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, put some comments down below, tell me your thoughts. Let's feed that YouTube algorithm to help get the channel some views and show a little support. I do appreciate it. So as we cover blue this week, we'll get right into it. First, we have Mordenkainen. So 2 blue and 4 for 5. This guy is a real good card. +2 to draw 2, plus he makes creatures that can kill. His -10 is okay, I guess. Definitely a must play if you have something to back him up. However, blue doesn't have a whole lot of removal slash ways to deal with things. Mordenkainen is a great card. But with cards having number of power equal to number of hand, I often don't see people play this. But if you do have something to make it work, it can be a good card. So I probably give it about 7 out of 10 on the good old limited scale. So moving right along. Next we have Aermeth, the Desert Doom. So this little fella is just a beat stick. 5 mana, flying, ward 4 when he's untapped. When he deals combat damage, draw up to 3 cards. He's just so much of a beat stick. I don't know what else to say. 5 mana for a 5/5 flyer is good enough, plus extra abilities. He is definitely a first round pick and powerhouse for blue. Next we have the Demilich. So 4 blue for a 4/3. This card can be good if you have enough instants and sorceries. The 4 blue can be rough, so you really have to be playing a hard sell on a blue deck to get this thing to work. But it can be powerful. It is worth a little bit of money, so I would probably draft it and then try to work around it a little bit. It works real good in decks with like black and white or red that has extra removal in it, because you can attack with him, bust out the removal from your graveyard, and start blowing stuff up as you swing. Can be a powerhouse. Definitely recommend thinking about it. But remember, 4 blue is going to be hard, so you may not even want to play him. True Polymorph. Target artifact or creature becomes a copy of another artifact or creature. This is a really expensive blue removal spell. Because you can turn things into other things. You can make a big creature a small creature, make your small creature into a big creature. But for 6 mana, this is something I just wouldn't play. I've had it a few times, and I've not had a chance to make it worth my while. So I just don't think this is good for draft or limited. It's more of a gimmick card in those formats, so I just wouldn't play them, guys. Good old Mind Flayer. So this is a powerhouse of blue. Nothing like control magic on a stick with legs. So 5 mana for a 3/3. Take target creature your opponent controls. You take their best thing and then beat them in the face with it. This thing is a powerhouse. You just got to watch out for removal spells or anything else that's going to get this off the field, because once it dies, they get their creature back. But don't worry. There's plenty of things you have in blue that can actually protect this. You can pick it back up so you can play it again. We'll see those cards later. There's also a blue card that gives hexproof, which can protect this for at least one turn. Also, if you pair this with black, black has lots of sacrifice abilities to draw cards and so forth. We'll get into that later. And creatures that cause the sack ability, you can just sack their creature once they decide to kill this and just 2-for-1 them. It is phenomenal, a powerhouse. I definitely say play it, but make sure you have a way to protect it or kill the creatures you get with it, because otherwise it's just a real expensive 3/3 that just might get you killed. Wizard Spellbook. For 7 mana, this thing is basically unplayable in limited. Some people are like, but Captain, it's 7 mana, it's limited. People don't use all their mana, and la 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 la. By the time you get to 7, there's going to be a deck out there that's going to kill you. I highly suggest against this. Great for Commander, don't get me wrong, but like in a limited format, especially in draft, I would not pick this because it's going to be a dead card in your hand to at least turn 7, and that's just not something you want for a book that doesn't actually do anything unless it interacts with other cards. So, next, the Yante Melesan. So this thing's a powerhouse, obviously. It's a 2/1, lets you venture into the dungeon anytime you deal damage to a player. And if you attack alone, it can't be blocked. So this is basically a way to run through your dungeons at lightning fast speed, plus the ability that it can't be blocked. 10 swings, you kill your opponent, right? If you got something to put on it to buff it or whatever, it's even better. This is a powerhouse for blue. Definitely suggest drafting it and playing it. Dragon Turtle. Well, This thing is okay. It's a good removal spell. It keeps the opponent's creatures tapped down. You can block with it. You just gotta be careful it doesn't die so they get the creature untapped. Um, the bad thing about this is you tap it and the other creature, so it is a removal spell that you can use to beat somebody up with. I would just be careful. 3 mana for 3/5 is good. So I definitely say play it. Just be careful how you use it. The old Black Staff of Waterdeep. So 1 blue artifact lets you turn something into a 4/4. Um, Pretty good card. The problem is in a limited format, it's really hard to get a non-token artifact. I mean, have plenty of token artifacts, right? But non-token artifacts are hard to come by, and if you are playing one, um, you probably want it to be an artifact that's good enough to be an artifact, right? So I mean, you can play this if that's what you really want to do, although I don't think this is good enough for draft and limited. Illified Scholar, this is a great card. 3 mana for a 3/2. Gives you the ability to bounce and replay cards. And whenever a creature you have deals damage to a player, you get to draw a card. This is a powerhouse for the format. Definitely a blue must play and a must draft. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This thing is a must play if you're in blue. Even if you can't mill your opponent, the ability to strip 20 cards at least, probably out of their deck of 40, means that you're going to get rid of a lot of threats that you normally couldn't deal with. Now, the problem with this is if you don't have anything else to go with this, I almost wouldn't play one of these, only because if you can't win by decking, there's no point in playing this. Now, if you team this up with a couple black cards that let that mills the opponent or whatever, or anything else, then yeah, one of these is fine. But if you're in the draft pod, you see one of these float around. I mean, these things are going for like $10, guys. I would take the first one and then try to draft a little bit of blue. And if you see a second one come around, just go all in, knuckle fist, and just Tasha Hideous Laughter people to death, because that's what I did in one of my drafts. And I gotta say, it makes you feel dirty, but at the same time, it gives you that smile inside. So moving right along, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. So 5 mana for a 3/4. When it comes into play, take a card that's a spell instead of sorcery from your graveyard and either put it on top of your deck or in your hand. This thing is a powerhouse. 5 mana for 3/4 is not great, but the ability to get back a removal spell, especially if you're teaming up in black, or even white for removal, red for removal. Green's even got decent removal too if you want to play green. There's just so many instances of sorceries that you want to play again and you wish you could, that makes this card worth playing. Now, playing 2 may be a bit much, only because the 5 mana is really hard to come by in a limited format, plus the fact it's only a 3/4, but still fine. One of these is probably good enough. If you get a second one, I would run it at your own risk, because there's all kinds of shenanigans you do to get this back to your hand and recast it. So, Sudden Insight. I've seen people play this. I'm not a fan. 6 mana to maybe draw 6 cards if you're lucky. More often than not, draw 3. Even if you draw 4 for 6, you'll probably be dead before this becomes worth anything. Plus, there's a lot better things you could be playing than this to draw cards. Trickster's Talisman. So, depending on the kind of creatures you have, this is an amazing thing. Not only the +1/+1 ability, but the ability to copy a creature after you swing with it. It's a powerhouse. I would definitely play it. Just make sure your creatures are good enough that playing this is worthwhile, because otherwise it's just going to sit on the field and be a dead draw. So be careful. Blue Dragon. So I've always played this dragon, at least one of it, every time I've had it in my blue deck, and I play blue. 7 mana for a 5/5 flyer is a bit much, but the Lightning Breath ability to nerf your entire opponent's field can be game changing. I mean, you're talking about doing -6 worth of power. If you lay this and give something -6 worth of power total on their side of the field, the ability for you to swing in and win the race now is very high. Because A, they probably ain't going to block unless they can guarantee their stuff ain't going to die. B, on their turn, they can't swing in because their stuff has no power. And then C, when it gets back to your turn, yeah, they're fine, but now you have a 5/5 flyer with a free swing and you can start blocking again. So the power swing on this is incredible. I'd run only 1. I mean, maybe 2 if you think you can last long enough, but man, this card is good. It's so good. Next, we have Split the Party. Choose target player, return half of those creatures they control, half the creatures they control to their owner's hand, round up. This is fine, I guess. If you've got no other removal, then you have to run this. But being a sorcery, being 5 mana, and only getting half of their creatures It just does not do enough for limited or draft. It will get you killed. I've played it. I've never had a good time to play it. When I did play it, it didn't help enough. I highly suggest avoiding this card in a limited format. Power of Persuasion. So blue and 2, sorcery. You know, you can return, choose target creature, return to owner's hand, put it on top of their library, or gain control of it until the end of your next turn. So now this is a powerhouse card. It's 3 mana. If you get a 20, you gain control of it for your turn and your next turn. So it's 2 turns they can't hit you with it. Plus on the last turn, you get to swing with it. And a worst case scenario, they have to pick it back up. Like, decent removal. There is better stuff in the format, but the upside on this to be able to gain control of it, pretty sweet. Plus, putting it on the bottom of their library is also a great way to remove things. Feywild Trickster. This is really good if you have a lot of dice rolling going on in your blue deck or blue splash deck. 2/2 for 3 is fine, and if you roll a dice, you get a 1/1 fairy dragon that flies. Like I said before, flying is a real premium in this current set. So this card is a powerhouse, and I would definitely run it. Now, if you don't have anything to roll dice with, it becomes a really bad vanilla 2/2. So don't run it. Remember, guys, a lot of these cards are situational, and depending on the situation, some cards have higher values than others. So if you've got dice rolling going on, this is a powerhouse. If you don't, this thing is trash. Don't try to make it work. Next, we have the Centric Apprentice. This thing is good all around. 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer is really cheap. Plus, you get to enter the dungeon, or you get to venture into the dungeon when it enters. And if you finish a dungeon, now their creature becomes a bird with toughness 1/1 and flying until the end of turn, which means it does not become a good blocker. This thing is a powerhouse. If nothing else, it's a 2/2 flyer for 3 that lets you venture into the dungeon. Basically, worst case scenario, this thing is a 3 mana 2/2 flyer that lets you scry 1. I'd do that all day long. Next, we have Displacer Beast. This is also a powerhouse. It lets you venture. It's 3/2 for 3. It's probably one of the best costed creatures in blue I've seen, with the ability to pick itself back up. That way, you can actually replay it and keep venturing into the dungeon. You can block and do tricks. This has it all in one, guys. If you get a Displacer Beast, you best be playing blue if you got a chance. Fly. This is one of the best blue enchantments because, once again, I mentioned before, flying is a real premium in this set. Plus, not only does this give something flying, but if it deals damage to a player with combat, you venture into the dungeon. So this can literally run you through the dungeon like nobody's business. I highly suggest this card be played if you get one, even as a one-of, as long as you've got good creatures to go with it, because it is powerhouse. Guild Thief, another powerhouse for blue. Blue's really got it stacked up in this set, guys. 2 mana for a 1/1. If it damages the opponent with combat, it gets a +1/+1 counter. And for 4 mana late game, it can't be blocked, so it just keeps getting bigger and is a win condition with evasion. This thing is incredible. Definitely play it. Don't be scared to sacrifice it to a block because it can be, don't get tied up too much in things you have to have. But this can win a game, hands down. Next, we have the Soul Knife Spy, one of the very first commons and one of the best ones. 3 mana for a 3/2, and when it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. This is all around some of the best common action you can get. Not only is a 3/2 good to kill anything in the format for 3, it's on cost. Plus, if you get ahead and you manage to sneak this guy in and draw a couple cards with him, mission accomplished. So, Silver Raven. So, a lot of people are going to look at this and they're not going to agree with me. But I'm here to tell you, the turn 1 blue, 1/1 flyer that lets you scry 1 when it enters the battlefield is house, especially in this format. It's really good with black. There's a black card, we'll go over it later, where you, I forget what it's called, but you sacrifice an artifact or a creature, draw 2 cards to create a treasure. So turn 1, you play this and you scry. Turn 2, you hit them with it, and then sack it to draw 2 cards, get a treasure. You get black, you're playing black-blue, you get mana ramp, so you can do something for 4 on turn 3. Plus, you've drawn 2 cards deeper in your deck. It's just incredible the kind of synergies you can get off with this Raven. Plus, it's a free ping every time, and if you're playing, say, white-blue with lots of equipment and stuff, it's a flyer. It's hard to block. Like, equip it up and swing in. Like, I cannot tell you guys how sweet this card is. At worst case scenario, if you're behind, you play this for 1, you scry. If the next card doesn't help you win the game or deal with your combat, that problem that you have, put it to the bottom, and then you get a 1-turn chump block, so it actually gives you a reprieve for actually 2 turns of draws. This is a powerhouse in this format. I don't care what anybody says. Shocking Grasp, -2 and then draw a card. I mean, this is actually really bad in my opinion. The draw card is fine, but there's better things that draw cards. -2, -0 doesn't do a whole lot. And to be honest, playing blue, your creatures aren't really big enough to kill stuff per se, unless you play in a different color. I just think there's a lot better things you'd be doing with 2 mana, especially in the common slot. I would suggest not drafting and staying away from this. Arcane Inquisitor, this thing's a really good blue card for the aggro side of blue, so you have those cheap small drops to sacrifice. In late game, it's good too. You know, you play it, you still have 6 mana laying around, you're at a stalemate. Just start drawing cards or looking at the top 3 of your deck if you get 10 through 20. This thing is amazing. I'd run 2 or 3 of them every chance I get. This thing is great for blue. So, Rhyme Shield Frost Giant. Now, this is good because it's a 4/5 and it has Ward 3 for 5. So, not terrible. I would play it. But most blue decks that I get into playing have a lot higher power level and often don't run this just because it doesn't do enough on the ground and sometimes this is not big enough. But this is a solid card and there is a time and a place when this needs to be played in your curve to make sure you have that big beater that you can do something with. But it's really situational, and on most things I would probably say no, because your splash colors for 5 mana, your splash color should have a better card than this. Contact the Other Plane. So a blue and 3 to basically draw 2 cards. If you're lucky, you scry 2, draw 2, even better. If you get the house roll, scry 3, draw 3. This is an insta play in every blue deck. And if you don't know why, read the card again. Yeah, so you have to play this in your deck. It just so much. The scry 2, draw 2 gets you 4 cards deep. It just wins you the game. Jenwinster. So the last deck I played that was blue, I played 2 of these I talked about. This thing is on par with one of the best commons in this set. We're talking 4 mana, 1 blue and 3, so it's not mana intensive. It's a 3/3 flyer for 4. That's already on rate. And you can get lucky enough you're often going to scry 2 when you play this, which can be devastating in a limited format when you're looking for answers or more aggro. This is a powerhouse. I would play 3 or maybe even 4 of them if I had a chance, because it's going to dig you to what you need. Plus, it's a 3/3 flyer. Flying's hard to block. It's just this is the card of the set. Scion of Stiga, a blue and 2 for a 2/1. When it comes in, you can tap a creature, maybe even tap it for a whole extra turn. This is great common. I'm not gonna deny it. I often don't play it just because other commons are better. 3 mana for a 2/1. Not all that great late game. Can be played though. It is good. So don't underestimate it. If you need some removal or some tempo action, this is the card for you. Pixie Guide, 1/3 flyer for 2. This is a fine card. It gives you the grand advantage. If you're rolling dice, this card's great. Also, if you have equipment in your deck, well, again, 1/3 flyer. Flying's hard to deal with. Equip it up and start swinging. If nothing else, this card can be playable, is doable. So don't underestimate it. Also, with all the dice rolling that happens in this format, if you lay this on turn 2, they're going to think you have a dice rolling advantage or cards in your deck, whether you do or not, and they will kill this, which means you're going to have them waste a removal spell on this 1/3, and maybe sometimes that's what you need to protect your other good blue cards that don't roll dice. So remember that. Nice little trick for your opponent. Because I'll tell you right now, if I see this thing on the field, it's going to die. Secret Door for 1 blue. It's an 0/4. Lets you venture to the dungeon. This is a fine sideboard card. I wouldn't main deck it unless you end up, we come across an aggro deck. I'd put this in. The ability to block plus the ability to venture in the dungeon on your main phase when you've got nothing else to do is great. But not a starter because it really doesn't do anything until turn 5. And by turn 5, especially in blue and a splash color, you should be doing some devastating stuff other than venturing into the dungeon. So Clever Conjurer, 3 mana for 2/3. This is perfectly fine. You get to untap a permanent. You can untap your land to cast bigger things on turn 4. You can make a 5 mana cost spell on turn 4. Plus 2/3 makes it hard to kill. Blocks well. So this is a good common. But unless you got something to do by untapping some of your permanents that get tapped for some reason, I probably wouldn't start it unless you're looking for that extra mana or something like that. So Air Cult Elemental, this thing is okay. It's 2 blue and 4. If you don't have any tempo cards, you can run this. It's a 2/5 flyer that bounces a creature. The trick to this, though, is it's only going to give you a 1 turn of reprieve. 2/5 is hard to kill, but it is killable, and it doesn't kill very fast. So this is not something you're going to play on turn 6 and win the race. So if you need removal, and this is your only option, yeah, sure. But if you've gotten to this point, I'm questioning what other blue stuff or splash colors you probably should have drafted instead of this. Next, we have Bar the Gate. This is a great counter spell. Starts for 1 blue and 2. Regular counter spells is 2 blue and 1, so this is great. It only counters creatures and planeswalkers, though, but it lets you venture into the dungeon. In a sealed limited format, people are going to cast creatures. They might even cast a planeswalker. This is a powerhouse and a great card. Because imagine countering a spell and scrying one. Or be deeper in the dungeon and like countering a spell and making a 4/4 death touching guy. So yeah, really good card. I definitely suggest playing at least 2 of them. Ray of Frost, another great blue removal spell. It has flash. It taps red creatures as soon as it enters the field. If it's red, it loses abilities, and also it doesn't untap during its untap step, so you can actually lock down other things other than red creatures once you catch them tapped. And if it's a red creature, you can just tap it right away. It doesn't untap and just lock it down that way. This is one of the premium removals in blue. Mordenkainen's Polymorph. 2 mana to make something a 4/4 flying dragon. I would not play this. I've always avoided this. Your flyers are not going to be much smaller than 4/4. That extra point is probably going to make a difference. If you're using it on their creatures, 4/4 is still hard to kill. I just don't think this is good enough. We have You Find the Villain's Lair. So here's your typical counterspell for blue, 2 blue and 1. But also the ability to draw 2 and discard 2 makes this amazing. Because later in the game, if you don't need to counterspell anything, you can easily dig through your deck to find those good aggro or other cards to help you win that game. Next, you see a guard approach. So here's the 1 blue card I talked about that has hexproof on it. The great thing about this is to protect your Mind Flayer in blue or any of your other creatures, along with later in the game if something bad's going down. You can tap a creature for the kill or tap a creature to prevent it from doing something bad when it swings at you. This card is multi-purpose and multi-tool, and a 1-of is a must, I think, in any blue deck. You come to a river. This is your tempo removal card for blue. I think it's amazing. You can make somebody pick up a permanent. Now, this is not just their permanents, but also yours in case they get locked down by something, which makes this card amazing. Because if something gets locked down by a lockdown spell or whatever, you can pick it up. Their spell goes to the graveyard, then cast it again. Plus, if you need to get in for that finder killing spell or special effect, you can make your thing unblockable and get +1/+0. Great multi-purpose tool. The last blue deck I played had 2 of these, and it was nothing but a powerhouse every time I played it. So definitely suggest drafting it. Charm Sleep is back again. Your basic 2 blue and 1. Tap the enchanted creature, doesn't untap. Basic blue removal lockdown spell. Always should be in your deck if you get a chance to play blue and you have this available. Shortcut Seeker. This is a fine card in blue. It's a 2/5 for 4. You venture in the dungeon if you hit your opponent, but there's no other way to hit your opponent. Now, if you're playing black, you got Thieves' Pick, it becomes really easy with this card. But all in all, the last couple times I've played blue, I've taken this card out for other cards that just do better things. Like, for example, I'd rather play the black card, for 2 black and 3 that when a creature dies, you venture, because it's a 3/5 and it blocks better. Yeah, this is 1 cheaper, but more often than not, it's a 2/5 with no abilities. You're not going to swing in and hit them. Again, unless you're playing some kind of weird equipment. It's all situational, right? But as all in all, I can think of better creatures than this to be equipping up. So, it's not bad to draft in case of emergency, but don't plan on putting this in your deck. Alright, next here we have Wizard's Class. This is a powerhouse for blue. Yeah, it's 1 blue, late early turns, then later 3 mana to divinate. 4 mana, draw 2 cards, and limited. I'll pay that all day long. Matter of fact, the instant spell we talked about earlier was the exact same. Except you might be able to scry to this. You can divide it up, so on turn 3, if there's nothing going on because they're not playing anything because they're playing big creatures, and you're waiting for them, you can easily just draw up 2 cards. And if you get this to 5 and start putting counters on your creatures every time you draw, this could end the game quick. Powerhouse, I think it's great. I think this should even see standard play. Like, this is a limited powerhouse. All right, guys. So now we're gonna talk about the Hall of Storm Giants. Of course, if you're playing blue, you should be playing this. 6 mana for a 7/7 creature with Ward 3 that is a land in blue. I'm gonna say it again, guys. All the man lands in this set are just phenomenal, and this one's no exception. If you're gonna play blue, even splash it. Like, this is cards you want to play, because if you got one other island, all it takes is this becoming a 7/7 one time and getting in there for you to really do some damage and probably even win a game. So, guys, with that said, that wraps up the blue edition today. I really think blue has a lot of powerhouse cards in this set. And I would definitely look at when you draft. If you got a table full of people who don't like to play blue, you might want to slide into this, because I think blue is probably one of the unspoken hardcore colors that's going to do some serious wreckage in the limited format. And when you start pairing it up with other colors to get their removal or their better creatures or whatever it is you got going on, it's just a powerhouse. The decks, it's all the colors are balanced well, but blue is no slouch, guys, and I'm thinking I'm pretty fond of it. So, with that said, until next time, guys, thanks a lot. And tomorrow we'll probably cover um, the black section. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next time. And hopefully this weekend, maybe I'll see you across the table playing some limited on release.